powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it's brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how. Go to PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. It's Football at 4. And here's Geoff Mosher as we have plenty more to discuss today as we get closer to the draft. That trade has changed a bunch of things. We're looking at holes on the offensive side of the ball yesterday and how they plan on filling them. Well, today we're going to take a look over on the defensive side of the ball because, Jeff, a lot of holes on that side of the ball. Probably more things to fix on defense than offense. Would you concur?
I'm sorry, Mike. Was this a conversation we were having at exactly the same time last year? Could that possibly be?
Well, it's funny because, that corner spot opposite Darius Slay was almost a daily conversation of like, what are they going to do there? Who's going to play on that side? Well, we're back to square one. They filled it last year, but they filled it pretty late.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, and this happens a lot. Sometimes a guy's name or the concept of a guy is better than what you're really getting. I remember that people were reaching out to Steven Nelson on social media saying, please sign with the Eagles, as if, Steven was like a 4-time Pro Bowl cornerback. And obviously he still wound up signing with the Eagles and played a whole year. And now we're in the same spot. And Steven Nelson's still a free agent, and the Eagles still need a cornerback opposite Darius Slay.
It's funny because it feels like, Jeff, that's the way of the free agent world now. If you're a veteran guy, you just kind of wait out there, and you wonder, like, do some of these guys wait because they don't want to go to camp? They don't want to do the mini camp stuff? Like, why is it that there are veteran players out there that probably could help teams? Gilmore, Matthew, Nelson. Why do these guys not have seemingly a ton of interest?
I would say that, Mike, in the era we're in now, because of the rising prices that teams have to pay for elite talent, young talent at certain positions, not just young, just elite talent. You see what the wide receivers are now making. We know what the quarterbacks are making, defensive ends, same. That the result of that has been, probably since 2011, last CBA, is that teams don't want to invest heavily into veterans unless it's somebody who's amazing like Von Miller, right? They don't want to invest in your middle-of-the-pack veteran, and you don't want to overpay for that. You'd rather try to replace that guy through the draft or get that guy on a one-year deal. It felt like maybe 8 to 10 years ago you can sign middle-of-the-pack guys to 2 or 3 year deals and have a little bit more longevity with them. But teams don't want to do that anymore. They want to save their money for the other premium spots and draft and try to fill those holes with better players and younger, more cost-efficient players in the draft. So your middle class now is sort of leaning on the 1 year prove-it deal. And a good discussion to be had would be, how many of these guys that sign these quote-unquote 1 year prove-it deals wind up proving something that they deserve more than 1 year? It doesn't really happen very often. And certainly with the Eagles, most of the guys who signed 1 year prove-it deals are somewhere else the next year on a 1 year prove-it deal.
Yeah, that's interesting because, Nelson last year, he signed for pretty low money. And I don't know, you say prove it. Were the Eagles just disenchanted with him that they didn't want to bring him back? Or, would they just wait? And if they can't find anything and he's not anywhere, would they go back to him, or is it just one of those things, we gave you the year, we needed something, and you didn't do enough for us to want to bring you back, so we'll just wait. In other words, would they revisit that if they can't find an upgrade?
Possibly, if not Steven Nelson and someone else on a 1 year deal. I'm sure that they will wind up, look to get someone of similar caliber, right? But, obviously they're going to want to wait till after the draft, because if they draft anybody in the first round and maybe even the second who they think can play right away, they want that guy to have that opportunity to play right away. I think a really fascinating conversation is the perception and reality of a guy like Steven Nelson or anybody else that they're going to sign to a 1 year deal. Because in the past, say under Jim Schwartz, who played a totally different scheme, we got very accustomed to seeing guys who are just okay or average getting beat over the top constantly. And therefore we're like constantly harping on, oh, you got to do better than this. You got to do better than that. Right. And Steven Nelson, for a lot of fans, I think Mike, held the fort down, so to speak, because you did not see him constantly getting beat over the top. So a lot of people felt like Steven Nelson really wasn't that bad. But if you talk to people who watched Eagles tape and, experts, guys who played or coached, and they talk about why the Eagles defense in general wasn't as good. Why did they have to play their safeties so far from the line of scrimmage? Why did they not blitz nearly as much as you wanted a team to be blitz and be aggressive? They'll tell you it's because the tape showed you that Steven Nelson had a lot of difficulty keeping up with wide receivers. And so they spent so much time protecting him that they couldn't do other things, and that had a widespread impact on the Eagles defense overall. So I know the common fan kind of looked at it and said, gee, it's not like we saw this guy getting beat over the top left and right, like Rasul Douglas a couple of times or Nolan Carroll. What's the big deal? But the reality is, if they played that same type of defense that Jim Schwartz did, if they blitzed more, if they did things differently to try to be better, that would have exposed what Steven Nelson was for this defense.
Good point. Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. You guys just had a new intel with Greg Cosell on the Inside the Birds platform, and you talked about defensive back fits for the Eagles. I mean, is it better to go through the draft, or do you think free agency is how they're going to play this again this year?
Well, I think that they're probably going to do – I think they have to draft a cornerback, Mike, and that, again, feels like a conversation that we had at this time last year and probably years before. But
well,
I think
a high capital draft pick, or do they go back down the same road where, hey, we'll just get a third, we have 2/3, we'll get a guy there?
No, I think that they even understand that they need to invest high capital in a cornerback. They almost did it last year. They really liked both J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain, and they discussed going up to get Surtain. Eventually, the Broncos wound up taking him and staying there, and the Eagles then traded up to get Devontae Smith. But they really did believe Surtain was a guy who could fit their scheme and would give them what they were looking for. So I now believe that the Eagles are willing to invest high capital, first-round capital, second-round capital in a corner. You see that, as I reported a while back, they're bringing in Sauce Gardner for a 30 visit this weekend. I believe it's been reported that Andrew Booth from Clemson either had a visit or is going to have a visit. I mean, they are doing their homework on corners, and if they have the opportunity, I believe they will look to bring a corner in high in the draft.
Yeah, and there's some good ones here. I mean, obviously Gardner, Stingley, they're the corners, and then there's other ones too. Booth, I know Andrew DeCecco, he likes Booth. McDuffie's been mentioned a lot in mock drafts, so there's going to be an option there, right? 15 and 18, you are likely going to have an option this time around, don't you think?
Yes, you're likely going to have an option, and I don't put anything past Howie as far as being aggressive. I don't know. I suspect Ahmad Gardner will go top 6. Maybe he gets closer to 10 for whatever reason. And then Howie says, is it worth me packaging, 15 and 18 or 15 and a second, whatever, to move up a couple of spots more to get Sauce Gardner? I mean, I will not slam the door on that because I know how aggressive Howie likes to be in the draft, and I know how good of a prospect that he is.
All right, so if they let's just hypothesize this and say they drafted, McDuffie. Okay, they got a first-round guy. Now the draft is over, and a guy like Matthew's still out there. Now do they make a play for a veteran safety? Like similar to what they did with Nelson. I mean, I think he'll get paid more than Nelson got, right? I mean, but
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say, but okay, we went out and put high draft capital into corner. Now we'll spend a little money on safety.
Well, I actually think they'll do both, Mike. And it depends on what you're talking about on spending money. But no matter what they do, I think they'll look in free agency for corner and safety help, even if they draft guys, because you never know. I mean, you draft guys, you hope they can play, but if they can't play right away or if they get hurt, you're back in the same spot. You still need depth. So I would, and now, again, we're talking short-term deals here. We're not talking like they're going to probably go out and sign somebody to a 3 or 4 year deal. But again, I guess if a guy like Teron Matthew is still out there after the draft, and if he's still out there after the draft, I would think he'd want to sign a 1 year prove-it deal so he can make more money after the year. So I don't know that they're going to be locking long-term into anyone after the draft.
Like Gilmore, too. I mean, he's another guy who, he got hurt last year, but he was one of the better players at that position in the league not too long ago.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's now over 30 years old. I think he's 31. So that comes into play. He's had the injuries, some wear and tear. I still think he's a good player, and he might be in that situation where he wants to sign a 1 year prove it. Now, I looked into him because I saw some reports linking the Eagles to
well, his wife indicated that they already called him.
Right. So I looked into that at the time, and the vibe I got, now this, stuff like this can change by the day. The vibe I got, that is, if there was any contact, it was sort of a check-in, not a, like, we're ready to make an offer or we have real big-time interest there. So I'm not sure it was anything other than that.
Right. Like, hey, do you have offers on the table? Are you going to wait this out? That type of thing.
That's the sense that I got, that it was not like it's. I know it's been reported there's a couple of teams, including the Eagles, in on Steph Gilmore, and that might give you the impression that it's between these three teams like equally. I just did not get that vibe or that sense that the Eagles were, like the lead horse in the race or even running the race.
Let me ask you this. We're all assuming they need a corner, right? The guys they have on their current roster, McPherson and the plethora of guys they rolled in here last year, they don't view any of them as a starter, correct?
I can't imagine that they do. I haven't heard that they do. I know they drafted Zach McPherson in the 4th round. They liked his athletics. I don't, he got a chance to play at the end of the year, I think in that Dallas game. I just don't know that they learned enough about him. He was mainly a special teamer. So, I mean, you could have certainly made an argument that if you really, really like the guy, you could have switched him out with Steven Nelson and tried to improve your defense and do things differently if you felt that he was ready for it, and they didn't. So, again, that's why you sign a guy to a 1 year deal. If you have somebody better, you don't feel weird about making that change in the middle of the year, right? I mean, that's what they did with Eric Wilson.
Now they got this.
Eric Wilson's not good enough, and they cut him.
Yeah. Now they got this parade of other guys that some of the guys they traded for and brought in, like Kerry Vincent, Tay Gowan, Mac McCain. I mean, none of those guys are in their starting plans, I would imagine. We're on the same page there.
I can't imagine it. No, they shouldn't be. I mean, these are all guys who are, either late round picks or rookie free agents. I mean, they're all developmental. They're all projects. So you can't just pencil any of these guys into a starting spot and expect to be competitive and a real team if you're doing that.
Right.
It's sort of like what they did at wide receiver a couple of years ago. They drafted Jalen Reagor in the 1st round, but then they also took flyers on Hightower and Watkins, and they brought in Travis Fulgham, and they got a little bit of lightning in the bottle with Travis there. But it's not like they just, bam, said, all right, we're going forward with Quez Watkins as our starting guy. They worked him in last year and made him prove that he was worthy of that extra time that he was able to get. So I can't imagine them doing that at cornerback.
Okay, and then at safety, you typically would not draft high capital in the 1st round, I would imagine. They've got Anthony Harris back. They brought him back. Marcus Epps, Kevon Wallace, Chachere. Not much that you would – I mean, the Epps is interesting to me, though. Like Epps – but is Epps kind of repetitive to Harris? Are they both more strong safeties than – so
no.
Is safety something that has to be addressed in some capacity, or do they feel comfortable with Harris, Epps, and Wallace?
No, they know that they have to address it. They know that they're not nearly good enough. They like Epps. They are not the same. Anthony Harris cannot flip his hips and run with anyone, to be fair, to be honest. Marcus Epps can. They like his development. They've liked his development for a couple of years now, and if a game was played today, Anthony Harris and Marcus Epps are your starters. They clearly like Marcus Epps right now more than they do Kevon Wallace, who they drafted 2 years ago in the 4th round. I think they wish they liked what they saw out of Kevon Wallace a little more, but they clearly do not. So that just shows you that they really need to hit safety hard. You and I both know it ain't going to happen in the first round, so it's not even a discussion worth having. But second round, third round, I think that's a discussion worth having.
The 2 third-round picks make things interesting. We're looking at some of the holes the Eagles need to fill. Do you think defensive tackle is a must? I mean, Fletcher Cox, we know they released him, then brought him back. Hargrave showed some signs of slowing down. Milton Williams seems to be more of a tweener. So is that a spot that will clearly be adding some pieces?
In the draft, yes. I don't see them going out and getting a free agent unless there's just, like a Hassan Ridgeway type that they feel like you just bring them in to compete, because they've got, for the season, at least 3 deep with Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, and Milton Williams. You want them to have a young guy because Fletcher Cox is going to be on his last year here, and because Milton Williams they see right now as a rotational guy. They don't see him yet as a starter, and you just never know. And, of course, Javon Hargrave is entering the final year of his deal. Yeah. I think he'll get an extension. They should give him an extension, but just in case. You just need a young guy to put next to Hargrave for down the road. And that doesn't mean he has to be a first-rounder, but you need a young body at that position.
Linebacker, I guess they brought in White. We know that you got Reddick, who's kind of an edge guy, linebacker / outside end. So is linebacker still a spot that you think they're going to add a talented enough player that maybe pushes for playing time, or are they comfortable with what they have in terms of starters?
Yeah, this is the great Mosher-Kaplan debate, because I keep saying, you know what, this is the time that they might actually draft an off-ball linebacker in the second or third round. Not the first. You can't convince me that they're going to do it in the first. So anybody who's calling you up and asking you about Nakobe Dean or Devin Lloyd, I would say don't even have the conversation. You're wasting your time.
Christian Harris. So can we get to Christian Harris then?
Now, that's where I say once every 10 years, this team uses like a second-round pick on a linebacker. It was Matt McCoy way back when, and it didn't work out. And then it was Michael Kendricks, probably about 10 years ago now. What was that, like 2011 or 12 that Kendricks was drafted in the second round? It's about time. Yeah, it's about time that they put another second-round pick into a linebacker.
What was Marcus Smith classified as?
He was an outside edge rusher. He was kind of like what Hassan Reddick is. I mean, you can call them linebackers, but at the end of the day, they're not off the ball. They're not covering tight ends. They're not running with running backs. They're not 5 yards off the line of scrimmage as we know it. They're more like what you see out of T.J. Watt in a 3-4. You know what I'm saying? That's what Marcus Smith was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because Chip Kelly was running a 3-4 when he was here as Eagles coach. So that doesn't count. But yeah, they need an off-ball linebacker. Adam thinks that, because of Kazir White and now T.J. Edwards and Davion Taylor coming back and Sean Bradley, that they're probably comfortable because they don't play that many off-ball linebackers. You're in nickel, you play 2. You're in dime, you play 1. But I'm of the belief that, hey, once every 10 years, you actually got to invest in a really good dynamic athlete at this position. Davion Taylor's been hurt. T.J. Edwards only has 1 year. So Sean Bradley's a 6th-round pick who's going to make the team every year. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm kind of looking at them saying, you got some good talent here in the second and third round. This would be a good year to remember the linebacker.
All right, we got that. There's so much defensively that could happen on draft night. We know they love end. We know they need to get a tackle. The linebacker spot has been a topic of conversation for years. They need a corner. They need a safety. So they can go to all 3 levels of the field. We'll keep our eyes on that here on Football at 4. Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. Make sure you check those guys out leading up to the draft and every day here on Football at 4. Andrew's in tomorrow, Adam on Friday. Geoff, have a great rest of your week, man.
Been fun, man. Thanks. You too.
Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com. Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live.